Hey guys, I'd like to read you a little excerpt from my book today titled, What Do You Want? Today's chapter is titled, The Ghost. It's about making goals reachable, being real with yourself, and not running from your past. Many of us fight invisible battles every single day. We tend to create obstacles for ourselves that sometimes are not even there. Life is difficult enough already, and when possible, we need to focus on reality more than we do perception. This is becoming more prolific in today's society as a result of our own self-imposed obstacles, like unrealistic expectations, lack of context in virtual conversations, like text and email, and unrealistic portrayals of everyday life on social media. The habit of measuring yourself against an ever-growing and imagined obstacle can lead to negative self-image and depression, to name a couple. I can identify. In my case, it's moving the goalposts on myself by trying to live up to unrealistic expectations of heroes. Heroes which have passed on and I can no longer communicate with. Heroes that are untouchable and have now become figments rather than realities. 3 of my childhood heroes were Walter Payton, Michael Jordan, and my papa. I love my grandfather Ole dearly. He was my papa, and he is my ghost. He loved me unconditionally and non-judgmentally. He rarely, if ever, reprimanded me, yet I'd run through a brick wall for him. I respected him and listened to him even in my most defiant of moments. My biggest fear was letting him down. He was a Marine. He was a first-generation, full-blooded Swedish son of immigrants. He was kind, he was fun, he was funny, he was game for nearly anything. Even as a grown man, he had a childlike wonder in his eyes. He was a mechanic, a carpenter, an avid reader, smart, loving, devoted, and loyal. It seemed he and my grandmother lived for their next vacation, usually Disney, the beach, or the Tetons. He kept his mouth shut when he was upset sometimes. He'd fight back once in a while. He had sad eyes sometimes. He'd grin and bear it a lot. He'd rarely complain. Countless people have told me over the years how kind, sweet, and caring he was. He was steady and dependable. He worked hard and never asked for help. He drank beer and smoked cigars. And he died of a heart attack at the age of 68. I was 15. I'd been trying to live up to his example my whole life. He was a devoted and faithful husband. He could fix anything. He rarely lost his temper, never yelled at me, made great money. Most of my life, the only one I'm perfect on, is being faithful and devoted as a husband. I've fallen short of him on everything else. I was 15 or 16. Comparing myself to a man who was a diesel mechanic, veteran, and carpenter. He built his own house and lived there with my grandma until the day he died. And I did not factor in ever that he was no good at those things, and he probably struggled with them in his teens and 20s. I was a kid comparing myself to a grown man. Even into my adult life, whether it was screwing up at-home projects, my inability to fix my own car, or snapping at my kids, I would self-reflect and compare myself to the ghost. As a result of that reflection, I found I was constantly beating myself down with non-realistic examples of the ghost. Not until I realized I was chasing an idea of him and not actually him did I realize that I was chasing a ghost. This realization was a process, and it took dang near 20 years. Everyone has demons, ghosts, and darkness. Everyone struggles with self-doubt and acceptance. Forgive yourself of your shortcomings and rid yourself of ghosts. Most importantly, love yourself for who you are and don't hold yourself to such high standards. Keep this in mind. I'm speaking metaphorically here. I could write a whole book on spirits, ghosts, premonitions, and my own experiences, but for today, we'll stick with the metaphorical. In a sense, this can tie into people, living or dead, really. In some men's cases that I've talked with, it's typically living up to their father's expectations. Sometimes in relationships, we can compare ourselves to false hope or endlessly trying to please the other person in a failing or one-way relationship. The example is, in this case, the sense of inadequacy, not feeling as if you are enough. And not feeling as if you are enough because you hold yourself to unreachable, impossible, or unlivable expectations. When it comes to a metaphorical ghost that haunts you, their impact is mostly in your head and based on fear and illusion. As I said at the outset of this chapter, many of us fight invisible battles every single day and hence create obstacles for ourselves. They can haunt the living daylights of you if you let them. Try hard to keep a sense of reality and don't let your emotional eyes deceive you. The ghost is already gone, but you are very much alive. And while you are alive, you can make that change. As I mentioned, my process took nearly 20 years. So the old Chinese proverb of 1,000-mile journey begins with one step. That's the right attitude here. Part of my journey toward ridding myself of my own ghost was reading a book about my hero, Walter Payton. It was written by Jeff Pearlman, and it was an all-encompassing biography of the life, the darkness, and the legacy of Walter Payton. I learned that my childhood hero had some deep flaws. I also realized that all of the good things I knew about him were still true. And in fact, though he was flawed, he was human. In a strange way, it was liberating to be reminded that everybody is flawed. Our actions, though, and our good deeds can inspire for generations regardless of our faults. Most important, after reading that entire book, I still love Walter Payton. I learned in his book that Walter Payton may have been unfaithful to his wife. I also learned Walter Payton was taking prescription painkillers, strong enough to work on a horse while he was playing football. I also learned, however, that Walter Payton would stand and sign autographs for hundreds of kids at a time. And not only sign, but have a brief conversation with each kid and make them feel valued. The book is riddled with stories of people saying that Walter Payton was a great football player, but an even better human being. Although he was flawed, he had a great moral base. Although he made poor decisions, he went out of his way to make people feel important and valued. He was kind, compassionate, and humble. He's still my hero. If I can learn all of, or most of, someone's deep, dark secrets, and then I stack them up against all the rest of their life, I would consider their actions, their lessons, achievements, impact, failures, mistakes, etc. If, at the end of the day, they have stacked up more positive impacts than negative ones, I feel I would generally still look up to them and realize that it's not all bad. I've come to an enlightened conclusion. Maybe people feel that way about me too. Maybe I do not need to hide my flaws, and though I'm not perfect, my friends, family, children, and wife will still love me anyway. I'm a sucker for a great redemption story, and they're everywhere if you want to look for them. Personal, emotional, and mental health are not easy to change. It requires a lot of reflection, undoing, relearning, and tough love. It's going to require support along the journey from family, friends, and loved ones. It may even take medication, therapy, religion, or all of the above. But I can assure you, undoubtedly, it starts with you. Know the answer to what do you want and take your first steps into a larger world of self-improvement. There is no better place to be than here, and no better time to be here than now. Strive to leave the world a better place than you found it. But don't forget, in order to do that, you need to get your house in order first. Don't signal your greatness by one or two virtues, and ignore all your shortcomings, especially if you're going to do that, don't judge others or put yourself on a pedestal. Make yourself better first. Judge others not as much. Walter Payton once said, "When you're good at something, you tell everyone how good you are. When you are great, they tell you." Remember to be a leader and an inspiration to yourself as well as others. And rather than run from or ignore your past, embrace it and learn from it. I could easily feel ashamed to admit my false sense of inadequacy, negative self-image, but I choose to no longer be afraid. Perhaps this step on a long journey can be an inspiration to others. I identify as a leader, and I intend to be a positive one. Sometimes you need to be a vocal leader, but many times simply leading by example speaks loudly to those who are watching you. It also helps to build the discipline in yourself to be a leader to those around you, but most importantly, a leader for yourself. Thanks for stopping by. If you like this, there's a lot more chapters in the book, What Do You Want? And if you really like this, maybe I'll keep a reading to you. Till next time, good luck. May the force be with you.